Most people like to believe that civilization protects us from violence, that as we build better societies, improve our technology, and become more advanced, we grow out of our barbaric side. We like to think that being modern means being more human, more kind, and more rational. The common story we've been told is that violence belongs to the past, that it was something of ancient tribes, collapsing empires, and dark ages. We want to imagine that in today's world, with democracies, rights, and progress, we've moved past those old, brutal instincts. But that belief, as nice as it sounds, might be one of the most dangerous lies of our time. The truth is uncomfortable. Violence didn't disappear with civilization. It only changed its form. It has evolved, learned new shapes, and been carefully woven into the systems that rule us. Modern society doesn't destroy violence. It hides it, manages it, and uses it in ways that seem clean and justified. What used to be open brutality has become silent control, through laws, institutions, and social norms. The same logic remains. Find someone to blame, label them the problem, and keep them outside so the rest of society feels stable and safe. This isn't a new idea. Thinkers like René Girard spent their lives trying to understand why violence never truly goes away. Girard believed that violence is at the center of human culture. In his book Violence and the Sacred, he explained that society was built on imitation, rivalry, and sacrifice. According to him, for a group of people to stay united, they've always needed someone to exclude, a victim to carry the weight of the community's tension. These victims aren't chosen by logic. They're chosen through hidden social patterns that make it seem natural to blame them. Throughout history, those in power understood this game better than anyone. They didn't try to remove violence from society. They just made sure it was never turned against them. But violence doesn't live only in governments or systems. It also lives inside each person. Carl Jung, who studied the deepest parts of the human mind, said that the things we reject in ourselves, anger, fear, jealousy, the urge to destroy, don't just disappear. He called this hidden part of us the shadow. When society tells us that being civilized means never feeling anger or aggression, those feelings don't vanish. They're pushed down, and what we push down eventually finds another target outside ourselves. This is how groups of people become scapegoats, minorities, outsiders, political rivals, or anyone we can project our inner darkness onto. We see in them the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. That's why the violence we see every day, in social media, politics, or even news, isn't just a breakdown of the system. It's the system working exactly as intended. We've simply traded visible weapons for invisible ones. The modern person, proud of being moral and peaceful, often becomes a silent partner to violent systems, believing they're defending peace or justice. The more we repress our natural aggression, the more creative and subtle it becomes. Violence no longer wears a soldier's uniform. It wears a suit, a law, a trending hashtag. So the real question is, can a truly peaceful society exist? Or have we only replaced swords with algorithms, fires with online hate, and arenas with televised trials? When violence turns invisible, when it hides inside rules, institutions, and everyday speech, it becomes even harder to recognize. And that's when it becomes most dangerous. This script invites you to look at this uncomfortable truth not to shock you, but to make you see clearly. Because only by understanding the psychology of violence can we begin to escape it. Many people think violence happens because of bad morals or wild instincts. But according to René Girard, that idea is deeply mistaken. He offered a different explanation called mimetic desire. The word mimetic means imitation. Girard said humans don't just want things, we want what we see others wanting. Desire spreads like a mirror. We copy what others find valuable. Imagine two people looking at a simple object. At first, neither cares about it. But when one person shows interest, the other starts wanting it too. Not because of the object itself, but because of what it represents. The object becomes a symbol of power, respect, or belonging. And from that moment, a small seed of rivalry is born. The second person now desires the first person's desire. The other becomes both a model and a rival. And when that imitation spreads through a group, it turns into conflict. This same pattern plays out not just between individuals, but between whole societies and nations. What starts as a small difference in values, beliefs, or identity can grow into deep hostility when imitation and competition take over. And when the conflict grows too strong, societies look for a way to release the pressure. That's when the old mechanism comes back: the scapegoat. Girard believed that every human culture is built around a single act of violence: the selection of a victim. In times of crisis, people unconsciously pick someone or a group to blame for everything that's gone wrong. It could be a stranger, a minority, or anyone seen as different. This person becomes the symbolic center of blame. When they're punished, expelled, or silenced, society feels calm again, not because the real problem was solved, but because all the chaos was redirected onto one target. This is the hidden foundation of culture. We see it in myths, rituals, and even in how our modern justice systems operate. Violence isn't just a breakdown, it's a structure that keeps order. The peace we enjoy often exists because someone else is paying the price. In the past, victims were sacrificed in front of crowds. Today, they're destroyed in quieter ways. Instead of public executions, we have character assassinations on social media, selective laws, and biased news. Instead of fires in the square, we have headlines that burn reputations. Instead of open bloodshed, we have slow, invisible forms of exclusion. Those who hold power understand this perfectly. They don't fight against violence. They guide it, shape it, and use it as a tool. Their goal isn't to fix conflict. It's to control where that conflict goes. They let people argue, fight, and blame, as long as that energy never turns toward them. That's why modern systems are built not to eliminate violence, but to distribute it carefully, keeping the hierarchy safe. Violence, then, is not a mistake in the system. It is the system. It's managed like an economy, directed toward certain groups, absorbed by media, justified through politics. When it's used against those already at the bottom, minorities, the poor, the powerless, it becomes invisible. And when it's invisible, it feels like peace. But if violence is so deeply embedded, how do most people stay blind to it? Why do so many of us truly believe we live in peaceful societies, even while supporting systems that constantly harm others? The answer, once again, lies in psychology. This is where Carl Jung's work connects everything together. Jung explained how humans protect their self-image by splitting the mind. We keep one part visible, the part we show the world, and push everything dark and uncomfortable into the unconscious. This is the collective shadow. A society that values politeness, order, and morality will always hide its own aggression beneath the surface. From childhood, we're told that anger is wrong, that power is dangerous, that conflict is evil. We learn to bury those instincts deep inside us, but they don't disappear. They wait. And what happens to that energy when it can't be expressed? It turns outward. We start seeing our own darkness in others. That's projection. The people we dislike often reflect something we don't like in ourselves. We call others violent, selfish, or corrupt because we can't face those possibilities within us. That's how entire societies end up hating the very traits they secretly share. When this happens on a large scale, the result is collective blindness. People can support wars, police brutality, or discrimination, all while believing they're protecting peace and justice. They can ignore suffering, excuse cruelty, or even celebrate it as long as it's aimed at someone labeled as the problem. It's how good people end up supporting bad systems without realizing it. Jung warned that when the shadow is ignored, it grows stronger. The less we see it in ourselves, the more it controls us. A society that represses its aggression doesn't become peaceful. It becomes self-deceptive. It just finds cleaner, more socially accepted ways to harm. What's worse, people who deny their own anger become more likely to explode under pressure. So, when individuals or whole communities lose contact with their inner truth, they become puppets for violent structures. Once the enemy is defined, everything done against them seems justified. Arrests, censorship, discrimination, punishment, all in the name of order or protection. The aggressor believes they are a hero. The victim is painted as the threat. This mindset is exactly what allows authoritarian regimes to rise. People look for strong leaders who act out the aggression they've buried. These leaders become symbols of the collective shadow, admired for doing openly what others secretly wish they could do. The more we deny our darkness, the more we worship it when it appears in someone else. But the damage doesn't stop at society's level. It also eats away at the individual. People who see themselves as calm, peaceful, or civilized may actually be living in a quiet internal war. They suppress so much emotion that when life finally pushes them too far, a conflict, a disappointment, a loss, all that repressed rage bursts out uncontrollably. Jung called these violence complexes. These complexes are like emotional bombs hidden in the mind. They grow slowly, fueled by every moment we swallow our anger or pretend we're fine. They can stay buried for years, but eventually one small trigger can set them off. Someone cuts us off in traffic, a friend criticizes us, a partner leaves, and suddenly the reaction is huge, wild, and completely out of proportion. That's the shadow breaking loose, the return of what we tried so hard to deny. Behind every explosion of anger, every act of hate, every cruel decision made in the name of peace, there's usually a long history of repression. Both society and individuals suffer from this. We create systems that reward control and punishment, not understanding or balance. And in doing so, we feed the very violence we claim to fight. In the next part, we'll go deeper into how this repressed aggression, both personal and collective, turns into the cycles of violence we keep repeating, generation after generation. Because the violence that we deny always finds a way to return. Sometimes an uncontrollable outburst takes over a person, a sudden rage, a breakdown, or behavior that seems to come from nowhere. In those moments, the person doesn't even recognize themselves. It's as if something else has taken control. Jung explained that this happens when a repressed part of the mind, known as a complex, takes charge. But not all complexes show up in explosive ways. Some are quiet and far more subtle. Jung noticed that many people express their hidden anger or aggression not through shouting or fighting, but by unconsciously joining collective systems that punish or exclude others. This happens when someone, without realizing it, supports harsh ideas or unfair policies, spreads fake news that fuels hate, joins in online bullying, or stays silent when they see injustice. They might still think of themselves as good, balanced people, someone who believes in fairness and order. But beneath that image, they've become part of something harmful. This is what Jung saw in the so-called civilized person. In the name of peace and order, they justify cruelty. They don't throw punches, but they cheer for those who do. They don't discriminate directly, but they support systems that do it for them. They don't hurt others with their own hands, but through silence, excuses, and indifference, they become part of the harm. The strange thing is that they believe they're doing the right thing, because these repressed forces inside them don't appear as evil. They show up disguised as justice, protection, or morality. This split between who we think we are and the darker parts we hide makes people easy to manipulate. When someone doesn't see their own capacity for violence, they're easily convinced that the real danger is always out there. The moment someone suggests there's a threat, whether real or imagined, they feel an urgent need to defend themselves. And that fear is exactly what powerful people or systems use to control others. That's how many end up supporting strict laws, harsh punishments, or moral cleansing, all under the name of safety, family, or good values. But what's really happening is that their hidden aggression, the one they've denied, finds a way to express itself, indirectly but powerfully. Jung warned that this kind of inner division doesn't just make people emotionally sick, it also stops them from truly growing. As long as we refuse to face our darker sides, we stay broken inside, disconnected from our full selves. And when we're divided like that, we can't act with real awareness or empathy. Repressing aggression doesn't create peace. It only breeds conformity, fear, and silent approval of wrongdoings. And the more a society praises fake goodness or moral perfection, the more it pushes down real emotions, and the more violent the hidden symptoms become. It's no coincidence that many extreme acts of violence happen in societies that demand perfect behavior or image. When that mask of perfection cracks, all the denied emotions come rushing out. So, what can we do instead? How can we handle this aggressive energy in a way that doesn't harm us or others? How can we stop being ruled by these hidden forces and, at the same time, not become part of systems that harm people? The answer, Jung said, is to consciously accept and understand our own capacity for violence as a natural part of being human. We often believe that our world has outgrown violence, that modern society is peaceful, fair, and civilized. That belief feels comforting. It makes us think we've evolved past our old, brutal ways. But thinkers like René Girard and Jung both revealed something uncomfortable. The more a society believes it is peaceful, the more its violence moves underground, into its systems, symbols, and institutions. And there, hidden under the surface, that violence becomes even more powerful, even more twisted, and much harder to fight. Today, the cruelest kinds of violence don't happen on the streets with weapons. They happen quietly inside institutions, carried out by rules, paperwork, and algorithms. They're enforced not by criminals, but by people in suits, offices, and governments. It's violence that hides behind words like efficiency, progress, and order. It's not visible blood. It's invisible suffering. We see it when computer systems decide who gets seen and who gets ignored, when policies decide who deserves help and who doesn't, when rules create poverty or discrimination while pretending to be neutral. This is what some philosophers call structural violence. And it's one of the most dangerous forms of all because it doesn't look violent. It hides behind politeness, professionalism, and logic. It's violence that appears normal. And the ordinary person, just by following the rules and staying silent, becomes part of this system without even knowing it. They share its values, repeat its ideas, and think they're just doing what's right. But by doing so, they help keep injustice alive. They help a machine that creates suffering and division keep running. And because this machine always needs someone to blame, an enemy, a scapegoat, a group to punish, it never stops. The problem is that modern people have stopped seeing themselves as capable of violence. They believe that as long as they're polite, pay taxes, recycle, and follow the law, they're good people. But Jung taught that this is a dangerous illusion. Just because we behave correctly doesn't mean our darker impulses disappear. They're still there, just buried deep inside, waiting for a way out. When someone refuses to acknowledge their inner aggression, it doesn't disappear. It leaks out in smaller, disguised ways. Maybe it shows up as the secret satisfaction we feel when someone else is punished, or the quiet hatred we hide under the excuse of just having an opinion, or the judgment we give instead of understanding. These are small signs of repressed violence finding ways to escape. This kind of attitude creates a modern type of person Jung might call the unconscious accomplice. They don't commit violence themselves, but they help it survive. They think they're defending fairness, order, and justice, but their silence and fear of difference make them tools of harm. The tragedy is that they don't even realize it. This is what makes modern society so hypocritical. We claim we've become better, that we don't burn witches or enslave people anymore. But we destroy reputations online through mass hate, and we still allow entire groups to suffer under unfair systems. Only now through polite words and laws instead of open cruelty. We talk about equality, but still protect privilege and comfort by justifying inequality with language that sounds rational or moral. As Girard explained, violence is the most effective way to keep society under control, especially when people don't need to see it as violence. When cruelty is built into our systems, our language, and our traditions, it becomes invisible. It looks like normal life. And the people at the top, the ones who benefit most, know this. They don't need to silence others with weapons anymore. All they need to do is shape the story, decide who the enemy is, and let the crowd do the rest. When people are scared or morally confused, they look for direction. They want someone to tell them who's good and who's bad. That's when manipulation works best. The crowd becomes a tool of the system, spreading hate and punishment without realizing they're serving power. But Jung didn't believe we're doomed to live this way. He offered a path out, a real, deep one. He said true peace begins when we stop projecting our darkness onto others and start accepting it inside ourselves. When we admit that the potential for hate, cruelty, and exclusion also lives in us, we become aware. Denying that truth makes us blind puppets. Owning it makes us conscious and free. Facing our own inner violence doesn't make us worse. It makes us whole. It's what Jung called the process of shadow integration. He didn't think human aggression could be erased, nor did he believe it should be. Aggression, he said, is a natural, vital energy. It's part of being alive. When we repress it, we don't become better people. We just become disconnected, numb, and easy to manipulate. Real maturity comes when we stop pretending to be purely good and start accepting all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark, without shame. That's the real work of integrating the shadow. It's not pretty or easy. It takes courage to look at what we hate in others and realize it as a reflection of what we hide in ourselves. It takes honesty to admit that we, too, have the desire to dominate, to win, to judge. And it takes strength to use that energy consciously instead of letting it control us. When someone recognizes their anger, for instance, they can use it to stand up against injustice or fight for what matters. But when they deny their anger, it doesn't vanish. It turns into bitterness, resentment, or cold cruelty dressed up as reason. This truth doesn't just apply to individuals, it applies to entire nations and cultures. Societies that refuse to face their violent past end up repeating it in new forms. Institutions that won't admit their unfair systems continue to harm people, just in more subtle ways. Communities that see themselves as purely moral or civilized often end up supporting hidden cruelty, believing they're doing what's right. That's why the real question isn't, how do we eliminate violence, but how do we stop being used by it? The only real answer is awareness. The willingness to see ourselves clearly, without pretending, without masks. Transformation begins when we give up the illusion that we are completely good. When we stop chasing moral perfection and instead face the truth of who we are, we begin to change for real. Jung said that integrating the shadow is the most powerful act a person can take. Because once someone accepts their whole self, without needing to judge, blame, or punish others, they become impossible to control. They stop being part of the unconscious machinery that feeds injustice. That's why this inner journey is both frightening and necessary. It's the path toward real freedom, not just personal, but collective. So as you listen and reflect, ask yourself, what part of this makes you uncomfortable? Which idea made you stop and think about your own hidden reactions, your unspoken anger, your quiet compliance? This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness, about seeing the parts of yourself that the world taught you to hide. If this reflection has stirred something in you, stay with it. The next step in this journey dives even deeper into what it means to truly understand yourself and the society around you. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep watching, because awareness is where transformation begins.